Very fragrant flowers. No, we're going to want to see this. This is what we want to see. My voice will keep going, and this is going to change. This evening's class is going to be different. An unconventional Hare Krishna evening class. And the reason for this particular class has to do with a request that was made in Houston when I was in Houston before coming here. A number of the devotees were unable to participate in the yatra, which we conducted in Udupi and Melkote, etc. And the reason that we conducted that particular yatra was it was part 3 of a series of visits from Jagannath Puri, following the path that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 2 years traveled in South India, from Puri going down south along the... Kirtan's over. Kirtan's over. So we went to Sri Rangam, that's where we ended. And then we continued and went all the way down, and then up the west side, and we made it as far as Udupi several years ago. And then the pandemic happened, and so we stopped going for a while. And this was continuation. That's why we went there, just following the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and visiting the places that he visited, and the temples and the pastimes and the personalities that made those places something wonderful. So a number of the devotees in Houston were unable to go, and they requested, can you share with us what you discussed during that yatra? So we did. This is, as you see, it's part 2. It's actually part 4. But because part 1 had 2 parts, and this is the topics that you're going to be hearing this evening are, they remind me very much of reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. Shh. He's an active one, huh? Like a monkey. Let's see what happens. Okay. Like Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are many pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that were quite extraordinary. And then one might wonder, I don't know if you've ever wondered, but some people have wondered, how did they know that all those things happened, and did they really happen? And it's kind of fantastic. No, for us, it's okay. It's quite okay, because he's the personality of Godhead. He's Krishna himself. And Krishna himself had very wonderful childhood pastimes. And Krishna, who appeared as his own devotee, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Nimai Pandit, he also did very wonderful, amazing things and amazing things and amazing things. So, at least for those of us that are practicing Krishna consciousness for some years, it's not a problem. It's sweet. And for some, when you hear something quite similar, because that's what we're going to be doing this evening, about Madhvacarya, really? For example, the last week class we had about Madhvacarya in his early days, his father, of course, his father was a Brahmana, and one of the things that his father did was he had some land, and he had someone that helped do the agriculture part of the land, like a, and that agriculture person, he was like a landowner, not vast, but that was a means of livelihood for him and for the tenant, the one that did the agriculture on this land. However, from time to time, his father, there are different names for his father because of local language, etc., but Madhvacarya was his father's name, and he sometimes would borrow money from a wealthy man in order to get more cows or whatever. And one time his father said to his son, Vasudeva was the name they gave to their son, I know you're hungry, but I can't give you anything to eat because Mr. Shetty is sitting outside my door and he's fasting until I pay him. And I don't have the means to pay him, so we have to fast. I mean, they're Brahmins, they're virtuous, and it's not like they don't care. They follow custom and culture and etiquette, and he had a debt. So Vasudeva, later to become Madhvacarya, went outside and had a little conversation with Mr. Shetty, and just like a little boy, 3 years old, gave him a bag of tamarind seeds. And the little boy was saying, this is your payment. And Mr. Shetty was looking at the tamarind seeds and smiling, and little boy, like this little boy over here, and playfully opened up the bag. And when he opened up the bag, he saw, instead of tamarind seeds, he saw the same number of gold coins. And it was far in excess of what his father owed Mr. Shetty. So he was very pacified, and he left, and now the family could eat again because the debt was paid. Like that. There's a number of such pastimes. There's many more. I won't retell the prior class. I'm just commenting, how do we understand that these things really happened? Because you can hear some more of them this evening. And two things. One thing is, it is understood by the followers of Madhvacarya that just as Hanuman was the son of Vayu, did you know that? Hanuman was the son of, I'm looking at this little girl. Mm-hmm. Hello? You know who is Hanuman? Do you know who Hanuman's father was? Vayu. You know who is Vayu? Vayu is the wind god. So Hanuman had powers like the wind god. Shh. He could jump long distances. And he had mystic powers like his father. He lifted a whole mountain to bring the mountain to cure Ramchandra's brother. You know who was Ramchandra, right? Ramchandra? Ramayana. Hanuman? Ramchandra? No? I've scared her. Okay, well, okay. Just as Hanuman was the son of Vayu and the father of Bhima, because each of the Pandavas had a demigod father, the father of Bhima was Vayu. And similarly, in the introduction section to this biography of Madhvacarya, Madhvacarya or Vasudeva, was an angsa, an expansion of Vayu. So many times you'll see the three pictures side by side or one behind the other. Hanuman behind, because chronologically first, then Bhima, and then Madhvacarya. They're manifestations of Vayu, in different ways of looking at their manifestations of Vayu. Each of them are carrying powers like Vayu's powers. And in the course of his life, Madhvacarya, I'm kind of retelling some of what we already heard, but I have to do that just so you can get the background. During his time, of course, Shankaracharya was previous, but during his time, Madhvacarya's time, there were two most esteemed, renowned scholars in all of India, at least southern India, one in the west, one in the east. The one in the west was in his area, and one in the east was in Puri, and he also eventually became Madhvacarya's disciple. Both became Madhvacarya's disciple. And Trivikram Acharya was the most renowned scholar in the western side of India prior to Madhvacarya, and he became his disciple. Long story of how that happened, but so Trivikram Acharya had a son, and his son's name was Narayana Panditacharya, and the two of them collaborated. Mainly the credit goes to Narayana Panditacharya because A, B, and C, they were intimately associated with Madhvacarya, so they knew what he did and what he said. It wasn't just hearsay, it was firsthand. And they were gifted by Madhvacarya in many ways to be able to write and speak, and not just write his biography, because they wrote other books, other commentaries, etc., without going into the details. Following a great personality's life, commonly there's different biographies. This biography that I'm making reference to and from is those two personalities, Trivikram Acharya and Narayana Panditacharya. Very detailed, and they're the ones in this biography that gave the detail of how Vayu manifested as the son of Madhyageha and his good wife Vedavati. That's his names of his mother and father. So what we've covered so far, like 3 classes, so it's hard to summarize 3 classes, but who he is and where he lived and the predictions before he was born. There's a very wonderful description, the whole history of the Brahmana community that for generations had been in that place. His sannyas guru to be, he hasn't become a sannyasi yet, he's still a young boy, was the last of the Shivali Brahmanas from that line that were from the Bhagavata school. They were lovers of Srimad Bhagavatam, yet at the same time, because of the prominence of Shankaracharya during that period of time, and because one of Shankaracharya's sannyasis was from that Shivali Brahmana community in Pajaka Kshetra, the place where they lived, his Achyuta Preksha, his sannyas guru, was kind of, influenced, not more than kind of influence. He was influenced by Shankara's teachings, although the line in which he became a leader, a guru, was a Bhagavata Dharma school from ancestry, going way back to Durvasa Muni, after Durvasa Muni had become a Vaishnava. So anyway, there was a bit of muddy waters during his time, during this young boy's time. And he had appeared specifically at the request of Devatas headed by Lord Brahma to Lord Narayan to set the record straight, because the teachings of the Vedas had been obscured and they were upset. And they appealed to Narayan, and Narayan said yes, but not I'll appear. He said, yes, Vayu, you are very qualified. I instruct you. You manifest yourself in the world and you set the record straight. You make proper commentary on the Vedas. So the preeminence of Vishnu and Narayana becomes clear again, because it had been obscured. So that was his mission, mandated by Lord Narayan himself. And his appearance was in Pajaka Kshetra, which is a section of a much larger tract of land, a big part of that southern part of India had become known as Parashuram Kshetra. Parashuram Kshetra, name because Lord Parashuram, there's a long history, but after he dealt with the deviated kings 21 times and so forth and so on, he gave the entire world to Kashyapa Muni, and then he went to this part of India and made an arrangement with Samudra. I'm going to throw my Parashu into the sea, and wherever it lands, withdraw your waters and give me that much land as the place where I can stay, and that is Parakshuram Kshetra. It extends from a mountain range that runs north and south, and just west of that to the sea, to the Arabian Sea. And it's large, it's Goa, Karnataka, and what's the other? Kerala, thank you. So that's the area in which he appeared, in a specific section within that area in which he appeared. And so there's pastimes that took place in his childhood that are completely fascinating, and we're going to hear a number of them this evening. So the entry point is he's around 3 years old at this stage. And his father sees that his son is not ordinary. So he decides to train him, and he wanted to perform his Vidya Rambha Sanskar. You know what that one is. And so to teach him how to write. And they have a place in Udupi that shows where he taught him how to write on a stone slab. And so they have this special place where he taught his son to write. And very quickly, Madhvacarya, that's the father's name, saw that his son, that's Vasudev, that's the birth name of Madhvacarya. Very quickly he learned everything. And it seemed as if, to the father, that his son already knew everything, because he did. And then he began training him in scripture. And every subject he taught, within a few minutes, his son mastered it. So everyone was astonished. His father was astonished. Here's text from this biography. It's called Su Madhva. That's the title of this biography, biography number 2. With no effort, one could easily see that the goddess of learning Saraswati was in her natural position, standing with folded hands, offering respects to the great devotee of Lord Narayan Vayu in its plenary portion as Vasudeva Mukyapran. Mukyapran is another name of Vayu. So it's a bit of, I forget what the term is. There's certain kind of literature that's very high glorification of someone. It's that kind of literature. He became so accomplished, even as a young boy. People became a little disturbed, like, what's going on? And therefore, his father decided people might be envious, and so I'm going to train him in a secluded place. And, it's Prabhupada speaks about this. When someone is successful, one of the guaranteed things that happen is there's envy. So his father was concerned, seeing how he's so skilled, somebody might cast some black magic or cast an evil eye or some tantric or something. And commentary, it's easy to give commentary on enviousness. It's natural for someone, or even for parents of children, when they see their children are very successful or other children are very successful, to do the comparing thing and competing thing and envious thing. So it's really hard once envy enters the heart. Envy and pride are very destructive. So it's just a little bit of a lesson. His father understood the risk of enviousness, and to curb it, as his son was extraordinary, he took him to a quiet place and began training him. However, his son not only could master things as soon as he heard them, but even some of the things he hadn't heard, he mastered them before he heard them. There's an interesting pastime or event. One time, mother and father and their little son, Vasudeva, went to attend a marriage festival. Now, little children aren't so fascinated by a marriage festival. So while the marriage festival was going on, he kind of wandered off and sat in front of a Brahmin whose name was Shiva Bhatta, and he was reciting and describing passages from the Puranas, and had a large audience. And while his mother was attending a wedding ceremony, he went to hear all these stories from this learned scholar. And he's just sitting, the little young boy, sitting in the audience. He recognized that the speaker was making mistakes. And, in an innocent, non-confrontational, non-ostentatious way, he spoke up and said, the way that you're narrating this isn't the way that Vyasadeva and Shukadeva narrate things. Because remember, I should go back. His father, Madhvacarya, was a celebrated person in reciting Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas. So he heard already from his father. And so he knew, it's different than that. He had a grasp of these things. So in this assembly, while mom and dad are over attending a wedding festival, he stood up, at least according to this text, this biography of his life. What you are saying is highly speculative and cannot be taken as authoritative. It doesn't match what Shukadeva and Vyasadeva have written and spoken. And then hearing him speak like this to this learned speaker, Can we just, is it not working? It went out? I have another little device. Should I use the other little device? Okay. Here we go. I have two of them in case this doesn't work. I'm a Boy Scout. Be prepared, right? But I use this all the time. There we go. Now it disappeared from my screen. It disappeared from my screen. Okay. Okay, look at that. So the people in the audience hearing him speak like this, they wanted to hear if that's not the right version, what's the correct version? Little boy. And so he gave the whole explanation, the story and the correct understanding of the story. And the man who was this celebrated speaker was a little embarrassed. The little boy has corrected him, and everyone thought, wow, this little boy is amazing. According to this biography, flowers fell from the sky. Demigods are honoring this young boy, praising him, etc., etc. And then the narrator was all alone after everybody left. And Vasudeva, went back to the wedding event, and together they went back to their home, Pajaka Kshetra, and he asked his learned father, here's what happened, here's what he said, here's what I said, here's the explanation that I offered. And is what I said speculation, or is it what this speaker, Shiva Bhatta, said speculation? His father listened very carefully, because he's a very learned Brahmin, and he confirmed what you said was correct. And he noted that the mood of his son, at least when speaking with him, but others had also noted that there was no envy. In fact, on one occasion, when his father was speaking, there was a particular word in the text that his son Vasudeva felt needed to be emphasized because it was essential for having the proper understanding. Nikucha was that word mentioned in this biography. And since it's such an important word, it should be explained because it gives clarity to the context of the whole explanation. And you didn't give an explanation of that word. So, respectfully, not confrontationally, his father was appreciating this son is exceptional. He didn't take offense because there wasn't any boasting or any of challenging mood. Always respectful. He has all character and high learning, in short. That's hard. It's a difficult combination. His father was a very traditional Brahmin, and the traditional Brahmins would have their sons, when it was the right age, to receive Upanayana. According to their culture, in the 8th year, the boy would receive Upanayana. But this little boy was precocious, and he felt it was important for him to receive his mantras at the age of 5. So his father personally conducted the Upanayana ceremony, and after conducting the Upanayana ceremony. That means he's now eligible to formally study scripture. So he chanted his Gayatri mantra and performed Sandhya Vandana very meticulously. His father was very pleased. And in their area, Pajaka Kshetra, it's a kind of a hilly area. One day, shortly after his Upanayana ceremony, he was going for a walk in a forested area. And as he was walking, this giant serpent attacked him. And according to the text, it's a giant serpent. It's pictured in this carving you see in the background. There's Hanuman in the background. And before Hanuman is Bhima, because Bhima killed a demon in a big fight on a mountaintop in Mahabharata. He was a yaksha who had a big battle with Bhima, and Bhima finished him by pressing his foot on his chest and smashing him with his club. So in a similar way, this Maniman, who had been killed by Bhima, came back for revenge. He came in the form of a giant serpent, a big one, and the serpent attacked him. And when the serpent attacked him, he had poisonous fangs. So he actually bit him, but when the son, this is a young boy now, he was very quick and immediately placed his big toe, as you see in this carving, on the hoods of the serpent, killing him. Here's a painting showing the same. And there's some other children seeing the whole thing happening, and the serpent died. Maniman, from the Mahabharata era, came back to take revenge against his next incarnation. So while all this was going on, poor mom, she didn't know what was going on, but he was late. Moms worry about kids when they're late. And so she called his name in great anxiety. So what did Vasudev do? In a giant leap, he just, like Hanuman, and came in for a landing right in front of her. So she was very happy. There's the house that's up on a hilltop. And so he was elsewhere, but all of a sudden he just showed up in front of her. And this next photograph, whoops, not this one. So he is exhibiting features of both Hanuman being able to jump a big distance, and also features like Bhima killing a giant demon in powerful ease. Here's the commemoration place. You see it's there. It's in a few different languages. Pajaka Kshetra, that's their home place. And where he landed, there's a big impression in the ground, and they have marked the place where the big impression is still visible. And nearby, there's a small temple near where his home was. His mother, in the course of cooking, one day asked her son, "Can you cover some vessels that are used for making curd out of milk?" He didn't find any covers. You see the size of that stone? He picked up the stone and put it over the pots. 3 years old. 2 stone slabs. It shows the vessels. I think it's coming. Anyway, there's the 2 stone slabs. Really big. So some additional pastimes. This is just, let me say a couple things before we go to more pastimes. Something that I've appreciated by going through, this is like 6 parts of just his life in detail and detail, and more detail and more detail. To me, it's very significant to have an understanding of our ancestry. How did we get to where we are? Now, most of us got to where we are because of Prabhupada. So it's nice to know about Prabhupada. More than nice to know. It's kind of like a standard thing that we should all be children and adults, be familiar with the Lamrita at least, because that's the root that's behind which we're doing what we're doing. But where did Prabhupada, and then the previous acharyas, and then Lord Chaitanya? But where did he get what he has? No, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he doesn't have to get it from anywhere. But he followed the practice and the principle of accepting Diksha. Now, he showed from his childhood pastimes. I was just listening this morning, Prabhupada was explaining the story of Keshava Kashmiri to Allen Ginsberg. 1973, it's very interesting how Prabhupada explained it. An American intellectual poet, the story of Lord Chaitanya as a teenage boy having his encounter with Keshava Kashmiri. And the whole thing, that's 100 verses, and there's 13 mistakes in verse number 64, and Keshava Kashmiri said, "How can you remember?" Prabhupada explained, some people can compose poetry and some people have good memory. So here's the mistakes. So, how do we know that happened? Yeah. So I'm making another point. How do we know that happened? Because it's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the authoritative author, Krishnadas Kaviraj, knew the story. So we have some idea of Srila Prabhupada and some idea of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is his line is a branch or shakha of a tree, and the tree is Madhvacarya. Shakha Bhed, it's called in Sanskrit. So I won't go into it because of time, but there's differences between the branch and the trunk in doctrine. And some of those doctrines, here, I'll give you 3 of them that are like, what? So different. There's many that are, so in the core, the tree, the trunk of the tree and the branch have many, they're identical. And then there's some very stark differences. Here's one. Listen, there's one entity that's absolutely independent, and that's Hari. All other entities are dependent on the one independent. That's easy. Then amongst the dependents, there's one that is never touched by sadness, sorrow, or, the modes of nature. And that's Goddess of Fortune, Lakshmi. In his teaching, she is a jiva. I'll say it again. In his teaching, she's a jiva that's never touched. And then all other jivas are touched. And then there's a hierarchy amongst the jivas. And at the top of the hierarchy are 2. Vayu and Brahma, because the Madhva Sampradaya. Brahma, Madhva, Sampradaya. So Brahma, and in the same category, he has categories of hierarchies of jivas. And his ideas of liberation are different than our ideas of liberation. We won't go into it. There are differences. And some of them are like, what? Now, that's, for someone that's been involved in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and involved, it's very clear what Lord Chaitanya is teaching. And how can there be such beta differences between the branch and the trunk? How'd that happen? Or what's going on, or something like that. And it's okay. It's okay because the trunk is the same. And that is, Hari is one without a second. And all others, matter and spirit, everything is dependent upon the one independent. Anyway, that's philosophy. But how did we're sitting in the living room over here in the suburbs of Texas, suburbs of Dallas, and probably there's no one of us in the room that was born into the same teachings that we're now embracing. I certainly didn't, and we all had something. We had some conceptions. That's okay. It's okay. And then those in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, let's take, I'm getting off from the biography part, just into explaining things. Gopal Bhatta and his uncle. Who was his uncle? Venkata Bhatta was his father. Prabodhananda Saraswati. Prabodhananda Saraswati? No idea. In Sri Rangam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveled for 2 years in South India. Externally or ostensibly, his purpose was to search for his brother, because he had an elder brother who had taken sannyas. And he's omniscient. He knew that his brother had departed this world, but he's looking for his brother. But the other reason, or the actual reason, was to propagate Yuga Dharma throughout all of the land. So one of the places he went to was Sri Rangam. And he happened to, many things happened, but one of the things that happened was the chief priest of Sri Rangam, who was Venkata Bhatta, said, "It's now the rainy season. Please stay in my home for 4 months." I don't know if any of you have been there, but when we went right to his home. The Parashara Bhatta, the present member of that same family. And I asked, where did Lord Chaitanya stay? And he just moved his arm like this, and he said, hey, the whole house was his. Now, the present personality in that line of Venkata Bhatta is very faithful to Sri Sampradaya. At the same time, he has unique and profound affection. I could give examples. Unique and profound affection for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'll give one example. He said, did you know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu carved Jagannath deities while he was here for 4 months in Sri Rangam? Did you know that? I didn't know that. He said, oh yes, he wasn't idle. He was here for 4 months. Come, I'll show you. And, practically taking me by the hand, some distance away from their home was and is a temple of Lord Jagannath, Baladeva and Subhadra. Features are different, but personally carved by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there, two, the son, Gopal, and the brother of the chief priest, Prabodhananda, Saraswati, both became Gaudiya followers, Lord Chaitanya followers. Both moved the boy, when he grew up, when his parents were departing this world, they sent him to Vrindavan, and he lived in Vrindavan and was, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, filled up to here with an understanding of Sri Vaishnavism. But he understood and had deep love for Lord Chaitanya and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And his uncle, the brother of the chief priest, wrote wonderful literature, Chaitanya Chandramrita. It's just verse after verse after verse after verse of glorification of Lord Chaitanya. It's really elevated Sanskrit, very beautiful, very sweet sounding. And he gave his heart to Lord Chaitanya. That's not how he started. And that's not how any one of us started. So is there scope? The answer is yes. Is there scope for starting with this and continuing to have some affection for this, at the same time a profound appreciation for the elevated teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and giving one's life and soul to the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And the answer is yes. Although there's differences in what Prabodhananda Saraswati and Gopal Bhatta heard and knew thoroughly inside and out than the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. No problem. No problem at all. No problem at all. Not a conflict. It's not a competition, conflict thing. Very, very wonderful. So it's nice to know, I will say better than nice to know. It's enriching my bhakti appreciation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by appreciating the trunk of the branch, the tree from which this branch came. It hasn't, there's differences, and that's okay. Quite okay. The essence is the same. Hari is one without a second, and he is the one independent, and all other entities, matter and spirit, are dependent upon him, which is true. And bhakti is the means of making that relationship with the source of everything. It's true. It's not different. There's differences, but the differences are not essences. The essence is the essence. And the differences are non-essential. They're differences. It's okay. It's okay. So he's the Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya. So it's good to know the Madhva part, since we're Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya. Somebody asked, while I'm here, can I give a class on one of the verses of Lord Brahma from chapter 14? Brahma's prayers to Krishna. You know those? No, I'm asking her. You don't know. You know who is Lord Brahma, right? Yes. So Brahma stole the calves and cowherd boys, put them in a cave, came back to see what Krishna would do. You know that pastime? No. No? Okay. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. He then saw some amazing things. Krishna had manifest himself as each one of the calves and cowherd boys, and then simultaneously forms of Krishna plus the calves and cowherd boys. His circuit shot. And he then offered obeisances and prayers. So it's nice for us to know, like Brahma Samhita, it's nice for us to know what are Brahma's teachings, what are his realizations and his teachings. Brahma Samhita, it's in a capsule. it's also good to know who's Madhva. And who is he, and what his life was like, and what's that trunk from which we are a branch, or of which we are a branch, because it helps us understand how we got to where we are. Here he is. Let's see how long it lasts. Mother's smiling. Let's see how long it lasts. Okay. I'm expressing like this so that it's like the backdrop before the deities. So make the setting very nice. So what's at the center, you can appreciate even more. It's the life and some of the activities, childhood activities of Madhvacarya. And he's the trunk. And his teachings are similarly. So when he turned 5 and he got his Upanayana from his father, his father is going to send him to a school. There's a local school teacher. And pay attention, because at the end, there's a present descendant from his school teacher that migrated to America and went back to India. There's a very nice description. Anyway, it's very deep. His teacher in the local language was Totani Tilya, but this biography of his life gives both his names, Pulgavana. So this Totani Tilya makes reference to the fact that he had a tota, or he had a garden, like Tota Gopinath. He had a garden. Totani Tilya. So remember his name, because at the end you're going to hear a descendant of him that came to America and had some experience. So he went to the school of Totani Tilya, and his father was relieved, like, this precocious boy, now at last he's going to have a really qualified teacher. Because not like his father wasn't a qualified teacher, but he was very happy. Mischievous and prodigious son would be taken care of by a qualified teacher. Now, he's with other boys, and he's 5. So what do little boys do when they turn 5? They're playful. Wrestling, studies, play, everything. He was always ahead of them. And in this Madhva Vijay, that's the title of this biography, this incarnation of Lord Vayudeva is swifter than the mind. Having controlled his mind, nobody can compare with him. So he would wrestle with older boys and bigger boys, and he would always win. They nicknamed him Bhima because he was Bhima. And when he was wrestling and would put somebody in a certain hold, they couldn't get free no matter what unless he released them. He's like powerful like Bhima. We had some of this discussion already. He could, like Hanuman could lift a mountain, similarly Vasudeva had strength. It's just not ordinary strength. At the same time, this biography, Madhva Vijay, gentle, smiling face. And in this demeanor, he would always defeat everyone. Friends, associates, peers, water sports, everything, he was victorious. And he was mischievous. As Prabhupada said, mischievous is a sign of intelligence. I think there's 2 kinds of intelligence and mischievousness. But anyway, at every opportunity, because he had a voracious appetite. We heard this in previous classes. One of the names of Bhima starts with a V. Vrikodar. You know the meaning? Voracious appetite, right? So he would leave class and go home and eat. And then he'd slowly return to school, and it looked to his teacher that he was like goofing off or not paying attention to his classes. So he accused the boy, Vasudev, saying, "Why do you not study with your school friends? You act as though indifferent to study." And the boy said, "I don't see the necessity of repeating something that I already know, and I'm already up to date completely in my studies." And because the boy spoke so strongly and boldly, he then challenged him, "Okay, let's hear the slokas you're supposed to learn." And not only he learned the slokas from that day, but even the slokas they hadn't learned yet. He recited all the slokas. So the teacher was a little miffed. And not only he knew the slokas, but the pronunciation was perfect and everything was perfect. So this biography, Madhva says the demigods showered flowers and wanted to know who was this boy. And many, many times he just showed his prowess as a scholarly young boy, 5 years old, 6 years old. They gave him different titles. The wrestling title was Bhima, and now he had another title, Anuman Tirtha, because he could always get a perfect explanation for any question in any circumstance. In this Madhva Vijay biography, there's a description that one day one of his friends had a big headache. Now we call them migraine headaches. The little boy had an acute headache. So Vasudeva blew into his ear. And not only the headache went away, but the boy, could understand his previous births. Now, we weren't there. How do we know that this happened? That kind of question might come. But these two authors, they're authoritative like Krishnadas Kaviraj was authoritative, like that, even more so, because they were present. They weren't present during his childhood, but they had access to his life. As a young boy, he had a particular fascination for Aitareya Upanishad. And this lasted for his whole adult life as well. He had particular fascination for Aitareya Upanishad. And it's described in this biography that he gave more clear explanations of this Upanishad than his teacher. His teacher was getting a little aggravated. But after some time, he understood that this is an exceptional student. So he started school when he was 5. He completed school when he was 12. How old are you? 13. You're not Vasudev. He knew everything. And on the graduation day, it was time to give dakshin. So he gave the best of all dakshin. In a secret place, he explained all the esoteric meanings of Aitareya Upanishad, which is how everything done properly, following the Vedic process, done properly leads to moksha through devotion to the Lord. No, he has a whole thing. Madhva, in his mature stage, has a whole thing about moksha, which is different than our understanding. But the gradations of moksha, et cetera, et cetera. But the access to that is the same, through devotion to the Lord. So his father, his guru got special guru dakshin. In this biography, the demigods, there they are again, speaking, our Lord. So he had requested Narayana to send Vayu, to send someone to make correction in the misdirected interpretations of the Vedas. So they're asking him, please do that. Concealed by Advaita philosophy, bring the acknowledgement of Vishnu and Narayana once again. So he took permission from his guru, and he's now 12 years old, and he's going to start writing books that make clarity and the proper understanding of the Vedas. Much later, he had taken sannyas and came back to visit his teacher. And the same Gurukul, same teacher. And he asked the teacher again if he could give dakshin. And he gave even deeper meaning to Aitreya Upanishad than he had presented previously. Now, he then asked the wife of his teacher, is there something I can give to you in dakshin because you cared for me just like my mother? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, when the school was robust and there were lots of students, we were able to get water for our garden. But now there's no nearby streams, and I'm a little old, and it's hard to get water from those streams. She presented a problem. So he solved the problem. By this time, he's a sannyasi, so he stuck his danda into the ground, and immediately streams of water came out. And the place became known as Danda Tirtha. And there it is. Looks like there's some fish and some other things swimming around in there. But that was the dakshin for his teacher. In fact, 2 additional ones, there are 3 such Danda Tirthas that are part of his pastimes as a sannyasi. And you'll hear some more about it coming up shortly. Near the Adipati Mat is one of those Danda Tirthas, and the pujaris that worship in this central, the Udupi Krishna temple, they bathe every day before their deity worship in this Danda Tirtha. Now comes the last. So this is a contemporary story, and the contemporary story goes like this. In the family lineage of his teacher, there was a son that by profession became a psychiatrist, and he migrated, or he became a resident in New York, and he served as a psychiatrist at Rikers Island, as one of the things that he did. Now, if you at all from the East Coast, you know what Rikers Island is. It's a high security prison for heavy duty criminals. Rikers Island, and it's an island. So it's hard to break from that place because they set it up that way. And one evening, he received a phone call from the people at the island, because he wasn't living at Rikers Island. He was living in Brooklyn or Queens or something like that. So one of the inmates, or whatever you call them, in the prison had committed suicide. So they wanted him to come and, medically and physically, etc., examine him to see if it had been, suicide or some other cause. So he followed the protocol, and he came to the conclusion that it was suicide. And by the time he finished everything, because it's one of those, you can't go the next morning, you have to go immediately. So it got late. So he's now debating. This is in the 1970s, by the way. He's debating whether he should go back at night because he was tired, or take rest somewhere over there and then go back in the morning. And while he was having that debate, he just fell asleep. And in his sleep, he had a dream. And the dream was wild. And in the dream, he was being attacked by monkeys. And they were throwing stones at him. And he then ran. And there was one big monkey. And the big monkey had big stones, and they were, making loud noises, chasing him. And in the dream, he went to a place where he was cornered in an alley. And then the monkey the big one said, "Do you want to hit me? Do you want to hit me?" In his dream. And he tells this story later. I was puzzled because I wasn't hitting him. He was hitting me with stones in his dream. And then in the dream, a big stone hit him in the head, thrown by the monkey in his dream. And then when he was hit by the stone in his dream, he called out loudly and woke up the other people in the prison. The other guards. And they asked him what happened. I got hit in my head with a stone. And so they did their protocol to see, did one of the prisoners get free and hit him in the head with a stone? And nothing like that happened. So he's trying to figure this out. He's a psychiatrist and a Brahmin and a deeply religious man. So he decided he would call his ancestral home, which is where his ancestor, who was Vasudev's teacher, Totanti Ilya, something like that. So he called his relatives and said, "Please tell me what's going on with the deity of Hanuman." And he said, "I was going to let you know, the temple has not been taken care of properly because the deity that his ancestor had was given to the local mutt, Madhvacarya temple, and they weren't taking care of the deity. They weren't taking care of the temple of the deity of Hanuman, and it was crumbling. And it was. He said, "I've started making the proper repairs, but the whole roof could fall on his head. So I'm very concerned." So this descendant of Vasudev's teacher, the next day is on a plane back to India. And he did what was necessary to take care of the deity. The detail is he had a court battle because the deity had been given to the temple, but the temple wasn't taking care of the deity. So with the court battle, he now lives next door to the place where the deity is, and it's right next to one of those Danda Tirtha places that Madhvacarya had made. So it's a detail, but it's that's a nice detail. The nice detail for me is this is the mercy that Madhvacarya, as a small boy, as a schoolboy, gave to the teacher, is being carried forward over so many generations. Okay. I warned you this is going to be a different class. Different kind of class. But I'll just say it one more time. One of the main values I receive from taking all the time to learn all of this, and the presentation, nice images and so forth. By the way, that's the deity. That's the Hanuman deity. And that little image to the right, where you see the book on the smoke coming out, that's a signal to me that I got to read something. Let's do this. So, how did we get here? There's a lot of people here. We all came from different backgrounds and different thises and that's. And here we are huddled around Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his teachings and the chanting of the holy name. Yuga Dharma, no problem. But the trunk from which this branch has come, of course, Madhavendra Puri was a sannyasi in Madhva's line. And he gets the credit or blame, whatever you want to call it, for entering into a mood that's different. The mood of love and separation from Krishna in the mood of the gopis. Aidina, that nice verse, which he said over and over and over and over again, entering deeply and profoundly into the mood of the love of the gopis in their mood of separation from Krishna. Now, Udupi Krishna is at the center of Madhva's mats. But it's a different mood. It's Krishna as a cowherd boy. He's holding a rope and a stick. He's a boy, little boy. And there's some history behind that deity and how that deity became, in a lump of chandan, and he received it in a boat, and he came from Dwarka, and there's all this interest. So I'll just say that one. Udupi Krishna? Udupi Krishna? Anyone unfamiliar with Udupi Krishna? Krishna and Udupi. There are 9 mats in Udupi. Udupi Krishna is at the center. It's a deity that Madhvacarya personally worshipped, and he received that deity in a very, very special way. So rather than retelling, because it's already kind of late, I'll just narrate, how did that deity get into that boat? Here's the history of how. So one day, Madhvacharya wanted to take bath in the sea. So to go from Udupi to the sea, some distance, not terribly long, but as he was going, being Madhvacharya, he had some transcendental feelings of attraction for Krishna, and he began, in his mind, composing some stotras in anticipation of meeting Krishna. Not the same as Madhavendra Puri, but in the anticipation of meeting Krishna. And then this biography says, he felt, I am going to have a direct encounter with Krishna today. So he was really, in bliss, heading for the sea. He took his bath in the sea. Lo and behold, he saw a ship, a cargo ship that was stuck on a sandbar. So what did he do? Compassion. He waved his handkerchief. And by waving his handkerchief, the boat became unstuck. And the captain of the boat saw the handkerchief, and he understood something about this person waving the handkerchief. So Madhva, now he's Madhvacharya, not just a boy, he motioned to the captain to come. So he brought the boat close to the shore, came down and met Madhva, paid his obeisances. I owe you everything. Please accept some gift from me. So I'm a sannyasi, I don't need anything, thank you. But ballast in your ship, what's ballast? Ballast is some heavy weight in the bottom of the hull of the ship. So when it goes like this in the sea, it doesn't rock so much because of ballast. It's purposeful, it's functional. In the hull of your ship, you have a large chunk of gopi chandan. I'd like that. Sure. 30 men tried to lift the gopi chandan chunk. They couldn't lift it. Madhva said, I'll go. And he lifted it. And as he was walking back to Udupi, it broke. And from the breaking of the chandan, there were 3 deities inside. And the one deity has the following history. The following history is, in Dwarka, Devaki was in Dwarka, Vasudev's wife Devaki. She said to Krishna, for those 11 years that you were in Vrindavan, I didn't get to see your childhood pastimes. They were enjoyed by Mother Jasoda. Can you allow me to see those childhood pastimes? He said, sure. And he assumed a little childlike form and started playing on her lap and doing childlike things. And she enjoyed very, very much. Now, it wasn't everything, but, he was doing a little childhood pastimes with Mother Devaki. And after some time, he resumed his adult form. Rukmini saw it. Devaki was happy. Rukmini requested, can you arrange a deity form like that for me to worship? Rukmini. So Krishna had Vishwakarma carve this deity that became Udupi Krishna. And when it was time for Dwarka to go back into the sea, Krishna had arranged for Arjuna to take paraphernalia from the palaces to a safe place. So one of those paraphernalias was the deity, Rukmini's deity of Krishna. And it was placed in a way that over the years and years and years and years it became caked with Gopi Chandan. Now, when they used it for ballast of the ship, they didn't know that was inside was Udupi Krishna or Krishna deity. But Madhvacarya knew. So that was his request. And then, so those 3 deities are today being worshipped in different places, but Udupi Krishna deity is at the center of 8 other temples. And there's a whole system that he set up for the worship of Udupi Krishna without going into those details. So there's a lot of history that connects us with Krishna through Madhvacarya. And there's a lot, it's not just information, there's a lot of feeling. I feel anyways, a lot of feeling that this connection is very, very significant. And to understand how we got here we are in Dallas suburbs sitting together hearing about our ancestry. Spiritual ancestry. Because that's really what our ancestry is. And it helps us to be connected to Krishna. How did we get here? The Krishna connection has, for me, become stronger by this very special focus on this visiting Udupi. All the reason for doing that was Mahaprabhu went there. But he went there for a reason. And what you read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, what he said to the followers of Madhvacharya, then called the Tattvavadis, was not the greatest. Their main asset, according to Mahaprabhu in this discussion with them, was their acceptance of the form of Krishna. And there's more, but that was what's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So one more evening, and the pastimes of his taking sannyas, and then his first trip to go to meet Vyasadeva. Stay tuned. He took sannyas when he was 12. Okay, any discussion? Yes. Here comes the microphone. I heard you.
So, can you help me understand how there's a connection between Brahma and Madhva?
The knowledge came through Brahma. Oh, here we go. Who was in the disciplic line from Brahma? Narada. And who is the disciple of Narada? Vyas. Tomorrow we're going to hear about Madhva going to get the teachings from Vyas. Now, there's two things that happened. There's multiple things that happened. But two of the big things, he had already written. But he wanted to go to get verification. Did I get it right? Before he began going around teaching his teachings. The principle of Vyas was his guru. That's the connection. And then Madhva, the contribution was, in a systematic, comprehensive way, he took all those teachings and put them in written form. I mean, it's similar to what each of the other three Sampradaya Acharyas did. Prior teachings, and he just comprehensively, systematically compiled them. But the connection is through Vyas. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj. My question is, when we hear of Vaishnavas,
This little boy may need to go to another room. He's a nice boy. Go ahead.
so when we hear of Vaishnavas, we hear as Lord Shiva is the epitome of Vaishnavism.
Speak slower. I couldn't get it.
Okay, when we hear of Vaishnavas, we hear about Lord Shiva as the epitome of Vaishnavas.
Well, in one sense, yes.
So my question is a curiosity question, that how is it that Lord wants Vayu to come down and propagate the mission, where we hear Lord Shiva as the epitome of Vaishnavism? Is there a history there?
If you're Narayan, then you can spin the dial and let it come out however you like. That is to say, Lord Shiva is the head of one sampradaya, and the Kumaras are the head of a sampradaya. Guna avatar and Shaktivesh avatar and Vayu. So he came, already it was Brahma, but in the line of Brahma, he came to give the teachings that he, the personality of Godhead, had imparted from the heart of Brahma, and systematize it and make it available to everybody. So, a qualified soul. There's diversity. That was this question. This question was asked in a slightly different way. The slightly different way is, why 4 sampradayas? Why not one? I mean, that's a good question. There's diversity. And diversity is just fine. And there's different people that have different dispositions, and some are going to be attracted this way and some attracted that way, but the center is the same. So, he had already given, the Lord, the personality of Godhead, Krishna, had already given teachings within the heart of Brahma. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye, and then Narada, Vyas, Madhva. So to take it and systematically distribute it. That was the mission. Receive it, compile it in a systematic way, and teach it to counter the confusion created by Advaitavad. So then why Advaita? Why did you just keep going with those whys? Covered atheism, It's Kali Yuga. It's part of Kali Yuga. But so back to your question. He wasn't the originator of the sampradaya. He was the propagator of that sampradaya's teachings.
Shankar Maharaj.
Yes.
I'm just curious to know those three deities that came from the.
You want to know which the names?
Yeah, are they similar or like?
They're similar. You want to see their pictures?
Yeah.
That was easy. Balaram and Janardana. Balaram and Janardana. Let's see who saw this one. There. Here's a nice painting, a very classic painting. That's Udupi Krishna, and I don't know if that's proportionately as large as the deity is, but that's the features of the deity. And here's the three deities. There's Udupi Krishna on the left. There's Balaram in the center, and there's Janardana on the right. Now the Janardana deity you can't see so well, but here's Udupi Krishna, Balaram, and Janardana, and where they're situated. The arrow on the left, that's where Udupi is, and the Janardana deity is 20 kilometers south. We'll go back. Where the deity of Balaram was found, or when the Gopi Chandan broke open, was in Malpe. There's where Udupi is, with a circle around it, and there's Malpe, right by the sea. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the very nice lecture about Madhvacarya.
Very different.
Yeah, my question is that you mentioned the main purpose why Madhvacharya came was to give an interpretation to the right interpretation to the Vedas. So we have seen in Bhagavad Gita also that the Lord gave the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Ikshvaku and it got lost.
Yeah.
So how is the knowledge, which is so potent, given by a potent authority, how does it get lost time and again?
Oh, you know. Let me ask you, how long is ISKCON going to last?
Prabhupada says 10,000 years.
Yeah, okay. And what happens after that?
Yeah.
And let me give another example. One of our temple presidents, I won't say where, he wanted to examine to see if the devotees who had received their Gayatri mantras were still chanting that same Gayatri mantra 10 years later. And they weren't. You know what I mean? Because when they learned, they had the sheet and they followed, and then they didn't need the sheet anymore because they knew. And then over time, the same person was chanting, little different mantra or some variations on the theme of. It's just time has a way of destroying things. Watch out for time, huh? There's some people in the back next after this.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, thank you for your visit and giving us your association.
Speak slowly.
Sure.
You don't have to say that again. Just
Yes. Yes.
when people, I don't hear as well as most people.
Yes.
Be kind to me.
Sorry. So in the past time, you mentioned the Vasudev as a kid,
Oh,
Madhvacharya.
you're really trying to speak slowly. Thank you. Go ahead. I mentioned Vasudev.
Yeah, he was very gifted and very intellectual personality right at the get-go, 5-year-old kid. And you also mentioned about pride and ego. Sometimes that can creep in when somebody is so intelligent. So my question is how to cultivate the knowledge in kids such that they stay grounded and
Thank you for asking, because I was prepared to speak about it, but I was a little anxiety about time, so I didn't speak about it. But I will, because you asked. Well, there's a direct way, and there's the Krishna banging you in the head way. That's an option. Krishna can take a hammer and bang you in the head as many times as it takes to, curb the tendency. But a gentler method is good association, meaning persons that don't have that feature, that have the opposite feature, and recognize the distinction between the prideful and the prideless, the humble and the, swagger personalities, and consciously choose the association of those who are humble and not prideful. Now, it's similar, different but similar, is it's good to have heroes. I mean, that's just a conventional, someone who, for me, it was Prahlad, as a new devotee. He's up there. And absolutely prideless. So it's good to have heroes or role models or persons who you can't imitate, but you can emulate, look up to, and feel, this I'd like to be like this. So, in careful study, so that you are in fact properly equipped with proper knowledge. But it's throughout Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, etc. The danger of pride and the merit of amanitvam adam vidvam, humility and pridelessness. So those are, cosmetic doesn't work. Because as soon as you put a Band-Aid over that thing, it's gone. It has to go more deep. Cultivation of bhakti. The purpose of bhakti is what? To please. So to please the Supreme Lord. For us, it's then those who are more advanced, we serve them. Those that are peers, we make friendship with them. Those that are innocent, we extend compassionately. It's in a number of places in the Bhagavatam and in Rupa Goswami's writings. So we just follow that principle. And it's a mode of service. It's good protection from pride. And then through the mode of service, genuine knowledge comes, not just information kind of knowledge or book kind of knowledge, but information that awakens from within. That's protection. Somebody had their hand up in the back. No? Okay. You have something. I think this will be our last question.
Maharaj, so my question was how to get rid of enviousness.
Oh no. Service. Always in the mood of service. And then the opposite is Krishna can bang you on the head. But why put Krishna through that trouble? Because he will. He doesn't mind. He doesn't want to, but if you know. So it's the mode of service. And that's, the language is simple, but the principle is also. You know, it's a little bit like, I call it the bungee cord effect. Bungee cord, they have two hooks, and it's kind of thick elastic, and you use it to tighten something, fasten something. As soon as you unloosen the hook, it's back. So it's an external becoming free from these two, pride and envy. I mentioned them already. It's just the bungee cord effect. If you just, behave differently, but the inside doesn't change. So it really has to happen from the inside. And the inside is amanitvam, adamvidvam, humility and pridelessness. Humility and pridelessness. These two things. And that's the foundation. So how do you cultivate it? Service. I'll share something with you. Two somethings. They're related to pot washing. Once upon a time, I was a new devotee, 53 years ago. I was in med school. I was in pre-med, accepted to med school, and I decided I wanted to. Bhakti Siddhanta was one of my role models and heroes. There's history of how that happened. And I read that he said, or read that he wrote, don't just, if you want to taste honey, don't just lick on the jar. Open the jar, stick your finger in, and then taste the honey. Then you know what honey tastes like. So, with that simple message, I decided I want to go live in an ashram. I don't want to just lick on the jar. This is, young guy. I want to jump in the pool. I want to open that jar and do it. So I got in my little Volkswagen Bug and drove umpteen hours to get to the Boston Temple because I really liked the Boston Temple, because at that time, that's where there was no BBT. It was ISKCON Press, because it was under one ISKCON entity, and it was all in just this big house on Alston Street, North Beacon Street in Alston. So I got to the temple. It was a Sunday feast, and they said, "Oh, you're just in time. We have a lot of pots to wash." The next day, the brahmacharis are going out on the Harinam Sankirtan in Boston Common. That's what I went there for. They said, "Oh, you did such a good job washing the pots. Can you wash pots?" And I was a little proud. And I was thinking, you don't know who you're asking to wash pots, man. Pre-med guy, why do we wash pots? But I didn't say it. I just grumbled inside a little bit. And they said, "Oh, you did such a good job." Prabhupada said that when you wash pots, you're cleansing your heart. And I was thinking, oh yeah? Why don't you stand next to me and help me? I didn't say it, but my college smart alecky mind was doing its thing for a whole month. And the place where the pot sink was everybody who went out in Harinam Sankirtan, which is what I wanted to do, went right past the pot sink to go out to the van, to get into the van, to go downtown in Boston Common and chant Hare Krishna while I was there washing pots. And they would pat me on the back and say, oh, you're doing a good job. And then I got another one. Oh, you're doing such a good job. Here's another Prabhupada said. Prabhupada said, when you wash the pots, you should wash the pots so nicely that you can see your reflection in the pot. And we were poor. We couldn't afford new pots, so they were used pots. And the bottom of the pot was black, caked on black, And I don't know if he was meant like where the food goes or where the flame goes. But I just said, you know what? I'm going to make these pots so shiny, I can see my face in the bottom of the pot. And when the last pot, 1 month through the ordeal, someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, guess what? We have another pot washer. Why don't you come with us on Sankirtan? Harinam. Wow. So you want to know how to become free from pride and envy? Wash pots. It works. I mean, you had to not resentfully, but devotionally. Because Prabhupada said it'll cleanse your heart. And I needed it. So he gave it to me. Very kind. He could have given me what I wanted, but instead he gave me what I needed. And it's with me today. The principle. I don't wash pots so much, but the principle. And when I was in Houston, I met somebody that for 2 years, that's his service at the Sunday program. He comes and washes pots for 2 years. People are off doing whatever they are in the temple room, and he's over there in the pot room washing pots. And this man's heart is pure. He's not wanting to be in the spotlight or something. So, because then when you are in the spotlight, to not be proud, but it's got to be inside. So take a position of humble service and stay with it in principle, because it'll make the heart pure. It doesn't have to be washing pots. Any service can make the heart pure. Okay, I'm going to end there. Thank you very much. And we'll see you tomorrow night, I guess. We'll see some of you anyways. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.